Hello, honey.
Hey, hey, welcome everybody.
Welcome,
Hi, Caroline.
everybody. Well, thanks for coming to this little bonus chat, and it's all about you and the questions you have sent to us. And let me say, for all of you listening, that if you didn't have a chance to attend this class, it was the holy season for mystics. And this is a class that's really all about you, all about the sacred, holy light within you, the yearning you have to know yourself better, that yearning that you're not sure why you have it, but you can't stop following it. So we put together this course about that, the power of the light in you. And the first class was on celebrating the light. And then we went into growing in the darkness, which is also a part of us. And then we went into the birth of Christ in you. And then a cosmic size love, which is just such a delicious subject. And then epiphany and a time for miracles. And who does not want to understand miracles? Who doesn't need them? And to be honest with you, you probably had 1,000,000,000 miracles in your life and you don't even know it. And finally, we closed with the bright morning star.
Hmm.
And this has generated a lot of inspiration in people, a lot of questions, and everybody wants more. Once you engage your light, you have you will never ever not want more. So where shall we begin, Robert?
Well, I think I also just want to echo, Caroline, that what we offered here was not just spiritual entertainment.
Oh,
It was like this really was a course. And actually, I think one of the features of this program are the inquiries within the program that are invitations for all of us to go deeper. Um, and and I think, inquiries like the one that you gave us early on, which was how do you experience light in your ordinary life? I You can't outgrow that inquiry. You can't say, hey, I've done that and park it. That's an inquiry. That's a journaling exercise for today and every day. Literally, firstly, welcoming the light into your life for the day. And then, maybe thinking at the end of the day, yeah, how did I experience light in my ordinary life today? And just recognizing that's the whole point of mysticism, is to see how the divine shows up in all of the ordinary moments, and not just on your wedding day, you know?
absolutely. And when you think light goes in disguise as kindness, as love, compassion, patience, and that if you took the word light out and just thought, shall I shine my light upon this person today? And an act of kindness is the power of your light shining onto someone else. And if at
Yeah.
the end of a day, when you feel depleted, think of it like the absence of light. You're missing light. And what are you craving? You're craving love. You're craving human companionship. You're craving light. You're not craving stuff. You're craving light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And even just this afternoon, I was doing a mentoring session with somebody, and we, as part of our focus, we focused on how do you experience the light in your everyday life. And this is I was doing this work with somebody who's been dedicated to her spiritual path for many years. She's a wonderful author, she's a wonderful teacher, and the inquiry was compelling.
Mhm.
It's, I think the sign of a good inquiry is that you know you you feel like a beginner, and at the same time you feel wise, as you engage in these inquiries. So it's amazing. So one of the questions that we received was a question actually from Claire, who was responding to the laws of light that you were sharing with us in the very first class. You really encouraged us to have a more intimate relationship with light, and to recognize the play of light in our lives and the laws of light that we need to pay attention to more fully and more clearly. And the question really from Claire was around which of these laws of light do you think, Caroline, that we should be attending to the most at this time? What is it that the light's teaching us, but in particular, what is the law of light that we should make our focus?
I don't think there's one. I think
Mm-hmm.
that you understand that light, I would say it's the laws of nature and how nature works, and apply that to your light from the whole way that nature works with the law of balance. And so when you talk to yourself, when you think of when you address anything about yourself, if I make this choice, will it throw me out of balance? If I say this to someone, will it throw our relationship out of balance? If I raise my voice, if I what maintains balance? Because that is one of the fundamental laws of light, balance.
Hmm.
And so you start living the laws. You live them organically. You realize that if you're not feeling what we call centered, then you're out of balance. And you have to ask yourself, what choices did I make that contributed to my being out of balance? And but put those choices in the language of light. Did I was I too much in my shadow? And am I now has the organic process of returning me to balance kicked in, which
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes feels like depression. But it has I am depressed of light and I have to return to balance. So when I think of the organic, that heaven operates as in an organic universe. God is a hands-on player, but it's organic. It's very the divine works within the laws of our biology, within the laws of nature, within the laws of the system. The divine's a law-abiding player.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. One of my contributions in that class was I shared how I had practiced meditation with Sister Elaine McGuinness, the Buddhist nun, and also a Catholic nun as well, and just her definition of meditation, light sitting in light. I just feel that's such a great place to begin as well. That it seems to me that, and I've caught myself do this as well, Carolyn, is that, when we start to think about the light, I can catch my intellect tries to interpret what the light wants, but actually we can go more intimate than that, and we can simply ask the light to be our teacher. So rather than intellectually meet the light and try and figure out the light, it's like, no, the light knows how to be the light.
Mhm.
And the light can teach you about the light if you give yourself to it. And to me, there is something about light sitting in light, just placing yourself in that receptive position and
Mhm.
saying to the light, I have no idea how you work. You're the one who's going to teach me
Mhm.
how light works, and ultimately remind me who I am and what I'm here for. So that's, I think, something I would offer Claire here is put yourself right in the center of the light and have the light and trust that the light can teach you about the light.
In building on that, I think it's important when we talk about mystical substance like light
Mm,
to ground it in very practical things,
mm,
like to recognize that the power of light in your life looks like your impact on other people.
mm,
That when you are more patient or when you're more understanding and you see the impact that has on another person, you see how calming it is, you see how healing it is. That is the power of your light in action. And that from that you learn, and this is how the light teaches you, that the more lightness you use, the more healing consequences you have, the more it is a power, and it is a power that impacts the lives of others directly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. We got a huge response to our second class, which was the class on growing in the darkness. And I think in this class, one of our aims was to say, look, we probably all of us start out in life hoping that we won't experience any darkness. I once saw some research, Carolyn, on college grads who were describing the sort of life they were hoping for in the future.
Really?
And everybody's life fitted into the above average category.
And what did they mean by above average?
Well, essentially meaning that firstly that they were going to be better off than the average financially. Their careers were going to be more stellar than the average. In other words, there's great optimism and great hope that everything's going to go well. But of course, the fact is we will encounter these times in our life where we're lost, and it is the end of things. And so we were making the point, of course, which all the great spiritual traditions do, that there is great suffering and there is great love, and we have to find a way to meet both of these experiences. There was a question from Michelle around sitting in the darkness. And essentially, I think, Michelle, your question was really about how do you discern the difference between ego guidance in the darkness and genuine soul guidance in the darkness. It's a rather broad question, but what's your response to that one, Caroline?
Well, as you were saying, I think the ego, the ego part of ourselves, it's not that the ego, I don't want to present it like that's the part of us, that there's no good thing to the ego, but the ego always creates fiction. So when we're in the dark, the ego becomes a fiction author. And it will make up reasons for why we're in the dark. That's not our fault, or this is just terrible, or it talks to us in ways that are not to our benefit. Not to our benefit. The ego's voice is very frightening. It's very trouble enhancing. It's very it just, if you let the ego lead you, it'll get darker and darker and darker, and you'll become more frightened all the way. Whereas the way of the light is not that all of a sudden everything gets better, but there's a calmness that says, I have to get through this. And sometimes getting through it means you have to do difficult things. Like if you're in a situation that is because you've not told the truth, and the situation gets darker and darker, the ego might say to you, the ego might say, I think you should just keep lying, tell another story, tell another story, tell another story. Whereas the light says, will you just tell the truth and deal with the consequences?
Yeah.
Just tell the truth. And that's the difference between how the light and the dark talk. That neither can make the problem go away, but it's how you manage it that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, thank you. It strikes me that often in the darkness, the ego is still attached to a certain outcome. And it also does want, it wants to go with the story that it most wants to tell. And it seems like in the darkness, it is a profound undoing. I think I really liked how we focused on the idea of also that the darkness can be a womb. Actually, in these dark, when we really enter the darkness and we're lost and we're not sure where to go next, actually we're meant to be undone. And in often I think the soul my experience of it in those times is that the soul is actually often saying, rest, be still. There is a greater movement in consciousness happening to you at this time. It's not for you to, there is a momentum that will take you out of the darkness, but it comes almost when you align yourself with truth, even if you don't know what truth means yet. But align yourself with truth and know that there is a momentum that will take you beyond the darkness, rather than this sort of the panic where you try to get yourself out of the darkness by yourself somehow. So I like what you say, like this sense of, dedicate. I think whenever, I know often when I've been in a difficult spot, like if I dedicate a situation to truth, and I remember, like you said, when you say a prayer to heaven, don't tell heaven what the answer is to the prayer. I think that's a good example of here. Like the ego will have lots of ideas of how to get out of the darkness. I don't think that's our work there. I think our work is to dedicate it to the truth.
And to follow say a little bit more about that. I think it's the ego that finds it impossible to surrender, because one of the ways you pray is to say, help me figure this out. Lord, help me figure this out. And I take my hands off the steering wheel. I surrender. However you want to work this out for me, work it out. But the ego finds it very difficult to say that prayer.
Yeah.
Because it's so terrified that somehow heaven's going to come down and say, well, I'm going to take your bank account, your home, your this, your that. You're going to end up a poverty-stricken character on the street. And somehow they always associate surrender with poverty and humiliation. It's quite astounding.
Yeah.
And that's the ego.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the undoing, I think, isn't it, as well, for sure, that the ego is undone in the darkness. And yeah, let's go class 3. Class 3 was where we really looked at the birth of Christ. And your point right at the beginning, really, of our time together today, we're really talking about how that, mysticism is always a reminder that these stories aren't really about other people. These stories are about us. They are for us. That's the point of a parable, isn't it? That's the point of a story, is that we're being shown a journey that is for us to take. Stephanie asked the question, what is, or is there a difference between the Holy Spirit and the Christ consciousness?
What do you think?
For me, I see the Christ more as our identity ultimately. So I see the Christ as that light that is singular and plural. So the Christ in me bows to the Christ in you, Caroline, and the Christ in you, Caroline, bows to the light in me. So the Christ is, I think, is our original nature. That's our original blessing, the original self. I see the Holy Spirit more as, I love the original description of the Holy Spirit, which was really universal inspiration. So the universal inspiration, I think, is that, is that the wisdom of creation is encoded into everything, but it's only the Christ that recognizes the universal inspiration in everything. So I see the Holy Spirit is the comforter. The Holy Spirit is, in those amazing farewell discourses in the Gospel of John, when Jesus is saying to the disciples, I'm going now. I'm going because if you think the Christ is only coming through me, you've missed the point. So I'm going to go now to another vantage point, and I'm going to make sure the Christ is available to everybody on the planet. But I will send you a comforter. I will send you universal inspiration. It's almost like, I think, the moment that we discovered the spiritual internet and we realized, oh my God, the Holy Spirit is the spiritual internet, the complete plug-in to the mind of God. And I think, like, we can plug into the mind of God, but not really with our ego identity, but more with the Christ identity. So that's sort of how I see it, is more that when I remember the light within me, I can plug into the universal inspiration that's everywhere and know that I will be guided, inspired, and blessed along the way.
I think that's well said. I think when I think of the Holy Spirit, I think of this intimate grace
Mm.
that comes directly from um, Christ consciousness, whatever that is. And our inclination is to see that as a person. Whereas I think Jesus came down to say there is this thing called Christ consciousness, and I embody it. I am not Christ. That's not my name. But that consciousness is flowing through me. And through me, this consciousness is capable of healing people, of commanding the physical world. It is the commanding consciousness.
Mm.
And I think the spirit is, I think it explains for me what is not a paradox, but it could sound like it, that the universe is incredibly impersonal, and that's Christ consciousness, but very intimate, and that's the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So that's amazing. It's like there is such a play with this, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
I mean, and they two have to go together.
yeah,
That's what I'm convinced of. So that's why I think it's a great question from Stephanie.
yeah.
The two work hand in hand.
Yeah, the
Um,
consciousness that Christ brought to earth, opened up, that laid the template for, and
mm,
said, this is available to all of you.
yes,
It wasn't because of him. He simply opened that up.
yes,
And it was because of him it became open, but that consciousness was the nature of God. And he
yeah,
said, and so it's impersonal, which is why you
yes,
could say it's for everybody, but it's intimate. The spirit will come to you as you're trying to become this.
yes.
You'll have all the help you need.
I think mystics and physicists have described the brain as an apparatus that it cannot handle the idea that actually everything happens all at once.
No, no.
And so therefore, the brain sort of divides eternity up into units of time and units of space. And so from that point of view, somebody has to appear to go first.
Mhm,
And so the Buddha appeared to go first,
mhm,
and Jesus appeared to go first, and then Rumi appeared to go, after that, and St. Francis appeared to go after that. But yeah, on an eternal level, when the Christ consciousness came in, it came in for everybody
mhm.
instantly.
Precisely.
Yeah, but in the story, it looks like somebody went first. Yeah, and I think that's
Right,
our great work with the second coming, essentially.
right, 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 right.
Yeah. Class 4.
Yes.
A cosmic sized love. Um, one of your prayers from intimate conversations with God, yeah, with the divine. Um, and we have a question here about love and the relationship to forgiveness. And I thought this would be a good one for us to pause here for a moment and just really, this is from Lydia actually, who's asking us to talk a little bit more about the significance of forgiveness and how this can support us in being the light and embracing the cosmic sized love.
Well, you know, I think truly that to forgive someone is the first is a the only mystical act you initiate yourself.
Wow. Jeepers.
That's
Okay.
what I think it is. I think it's because it is a mystical act, because forgiveness defies gravity. It defies your rational mind. It defies all the chatter, all the Hammurabi Code, eye for an eye, all this idea about justice and all this stuff, that if you simultaneously understood that everything that we have is involved in karma and in past lives, future lives, simultaneously, you have no idea. We don't know why things happen as they do.
Mm.
And what the inability to forgive is really rooted in this idea that something, okay, mama's here, that something fundamentally unfair has happened. Okay, all right, that something unfair has happened, and that this has to be reconciled with. I'm going to let you take it and get this dog out of here right now. Okay, you take
Yeah.
it. Here, come here, Abby. Come on.
Yeah, great. This is live, everybody. Well, I mean, I've just had to write that down, just what Carolyn said there. The only mystical act you initiate yourself, forgiveness. The only mystical act you initiate yourself. How about that? You know, for me, I think that with forgiveness, I think forgiveness is like love's greatest gift. I think the idea of forgiveness is given to us by the consciousness of love. And when we choose to forgive, we don't know how it's going to work. We don't know how to do it, but we do make a space available for us to forgive. And I think that when we forgive, it puts us in a position to give love another chance in our life. And that's why I often think that forgiveness is love's greatest gift. Without forgiveness, we will not stay in the game. We will rule ourselves out of love. But if we say yes to forgiveness, then somehow love can work on us in such a way that we get another chance at love.
I think that's beautifully said. You know how when you go to a optician, an optometrist, you go in there and they fiddle with lenses.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that when you're actually able to forgive someone, these lenses go down that you didn't know existed.
Mm.
And they're a lens into yourself as well as into the nature of the human soul,
Mm.
where you find that you're capable of understanding something from a much broader. You don't get this understanding before you forgive.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
as a result of cleaning out that space in yourself that had been brewing with wrath or resentment. That is replaced with light. And it's replaced with this incredible range of compassion. And there's a soothing balm that comes in. And that's why I say that forgiveness is this incredibly selfish, self-chosen mystical act,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not about that person. It's about, I do not want to be the carrier
Yes.
of this rage. I don't want it to control me. I don't want to have that be the lens through which I see my life. I don't want to speak it. I don't want to keep telling this story.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea why things happen as they do. But if I live in this, it's like screaming every day, God, you screwed up. You
Yeah.
screwed up. You screwed up. And you don't get how dwelling in that kind of temperament is so detrimental to you psychically, spiritually, every which way.
Yeah, yeah, it makes so much sense. Another way that I look at forgiveness, Carolyn, is that forgiveness is love's final act,
Mm.
and by that I mean that it's like it's the final act of the story that you've been telling up until now. Because once forgiveness enters, that story can't be told the same way after this. And I think this really became clear to me actually through my love of Shakespeare. And I know we focused on Shakespeare a few times in our program, but of all of the plays, I think there's only one Shakespeare play where there is no forgiveness at all. and it's in it's one of the Roman plays, Titus Andronicus, which is a complete and utter mess. The amount of revenge that happens is enormous. At the end, Titus kills two people and serves them up in a pie to eat.
That's right.
Do you know? I mean,
Forgot that. Yes.
yeah,
Oh
it's
my
like
God.
it's you come out of that play and you're going, oh my God. And this was one of his first plays, and it was
That's
like, I
right.
think this was his way of saying, like, there is no hope for any of us if there isn't forgiveness in the final act. Then after that, of course, you go to almost every other Shakespeare play, and in the final act there is forgiveness.
Uh-huh.
So Hamlet, for example, you know, to be or not to be, I think that's the story of, will I go for revenge or will I forgive?
Mhm.
And he asks
That
forgiveness
is the
at the end.
question. To
Yeah,
be or not to be, that is the question.
that is the question. And I'm also Prospero in the Tempest,
Yes.
the last play, you know, right at the end, here he is on an island and he's gathered all of his enemies around him and he wishes them well.
Yes.
He wishes them well. And there's a line, something like, the rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance, something
Vengeance.
like that.
Yes, it is. That virtue then in vengeance.
Yeah,
That's his last line.
yeah. That
Yeah.
so in almost and it was that sense of, my God, here's the great storyteller showing us that forgiveness has to that's the only thing that really ends the story that you're telling yourself. The story of woe, the story of being a victim, the story of being wronged. At some point, love
Think
says,
about
right.
that. Think about that. What a perfect thing that what people do when they can't forgive is they continually gather around them people to tell their painful story to.
Yeah,
Whether in therapy or in support groups or socially, they can't stop telling because they think on one side it's healing. They think it's healing. They and there's to some extent there is a support process you go through, a stage.
yeah.
But then the storytelling becomes a lifestyle.
Hmm.
And once it becomes a lifestyle, you really don't intend to forgive anymore
Yeah,
because it's become a lifestyle.
so true. Yeah.
And it's probably the darkest, subtle lifestyle that there is because that vengeance and that resentment starts taking the shape of ordinary social life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's deceptive and
Hmm.
and it chips away at your enthusiasm. To your point, it
Hmm.
doesn't make room for love because
Yeah.
it's quite the opposite. And everything
Mhm.
operates again on the laws of the universe, the law of magnetic attraction, the law of coincidence and synchronicity. You're working with wrath, and that's what you're attracting, you know.
Yes. Yeah. You know, when I'm working one-on-one with people, and inevitably in every story there will be the requirement to forgive. And often one of the things I'm looking for, Carolyn, is I'm looking for when people are finally becoming bored with their story.
Mm.
Because if they're not bored of their story, then it's like, I often think, well, it doesn't matter how good I am at my work. It's like, you know, it's not going to happen yet. But the moment I can begin to see that somebody is getting bored of telling their story, I just think that's one of the most hopeful moments ever. And I always get the feeling like this person's angels are also saying, hey, hey, gather around. This is action time. You know, this is it. They're finally bored of telling this story. And this is when, you know, forgiveness can land. And we have this epiphany in us. Oh my God, I'm capable of telling more than just this story. There's another story I could be telling, a better story than this. And I think, because one of the fears is, I think, is that we don't have another story to tell other than the one we've got.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing moment, I think, when people get a bit bored of their story, and, you know, there's a chance the angels are ready. All right. So then epiphany and miracles. This
Mhm.
is where we went to next. And Well, Karen, I wanted to share with you that something that really came through for me on this program that we didn't get to talk about, but has, you know, it's funny, you take a program and often once life knows you're taking a program, life orchestrates things in such a way as so that you're actually on the course 24 hours a day. You're not just showing up for class and you're on the course, you're actually in the course 24 hours a day. And there was this particular line that kept showing up everywhere I went. And it was really from Mary, because we began with Mary being the great example of Advent, the Annunciation, her surrender, her readiness, her openness. And anyway, the line that kept coming to me, that I kept hearing in all of the carols, Christmas carols, and in all of everything to do with the season, was "My soul magnifies the Lord." And there was something about those words that just landed for me, Karen, in a really big way this time, that's what this whole holy season is for in some way, is so that our soul magnifies the light. Our soul magnifies the love. Our soul magnifies the laws of creation that are that my soul magnifies the Lord. Something, just those words landed for me this time in a way more intimately, I think, than they've ever done before.
That's beautiful. I know, I think that's what um, the holy teachings, the scriptural teachings, what makes them so holy for me, many things, but I think what makes scriptural sacred literature sacred is that it actually does speak to you,
Mm,
and it actually penetrates in ways that when you are able to receive the epiphany, the hidden meaning of it,
yeah.
then it dives into that part of you. And it's like your brain is no longer reading it, your soul is.
Yes.
And your
Such a
soul
great.
says, "Oh my God. Oh my God." And that's where you just, I mean, you get ecstatic. You have
Yeah.
like this, you have this burst of light inside that's impossible to explain to someone because you could say I've read it 1,000 times before. That was your brain doing it.
Yeah.
But when a part of you matures enough to be able to actually get what that means,
Hmm.
then the soul's allowed to read it and light up,
Yeah.
and the illumination moment happens, and you become illuminated. The light goes on, and it will never go off. That's the thing that goes inside, and you go, and all of a sudden, you recognize what it means to be the light in the world.
Yeah.
What it means to be a light in the world, what how precious your light is. That that really, when you're looking at a person, there's actually a light shining from you to that person, like that the light shining from that person to me. And that if I in any way am rude or harmful to that, that light's going to go out. It's going to go whoosh, it's going to just go out. And I I now live in that consciousness. I'm always conscious
Yeah.
that I need to increase my light, and I can feel, I literally will think some kind thing about somebody. And I now manage my light as consciously as I can.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's such a great, such a great description of, yeah, where it's not now just received by the brain. I
Mm.
love that. That's it. And I think, yeah, that's what happened. And when you described Epiphany to us in the class, you were saying, look, this isn't just an aha. This is a no turning back, full-bodied moment where from now on, it's an experience and not just an idea. Yeah.
It's so great, big, huge, because it's like God saying, "Here, I want to show you the universe from a different point of view, and you get to
Hmm.
do it."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you see the universe is a very different place than you thought, and it's alive, and all life breathes together. And for a second, for one micro mystical second, you felt all life breathing together, and you were part of that.
Mm.
And then it's as if God says, now go on your way, but now you know this is a truth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could never go home again, right? I mean, you want to scream from the rooftop, oh my God, we're all in this together. We're all that changes the trajectory of your life, of how you understand life, of what you want to do to life, of what you want to give to life. You want to scream to everybody, don't you get it? Even the birds are communicating with each other, and the trees and everything. But you sound like one of the mad woman of Shiloh. You've got to figure out, how do you communicate mystical truth to the mainstream? How do
Yeah.
you do it? How do you do it? And what's worse is, how many people don't want to know?
Mm.
And I think, how can you possibly not want to know how
Mm.
this universe is wired? How powerful you are. Sometimes I want to beat someone with a salmon. I really do. I think, what is wrong with you? Really? I want to take a 10-pound salmon and smack them. I'm like, what is wrong with you? That's how we do it in Chicago. But I meant, like, how could you not want to know?
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I think it's partly because we've trained ourselves to thinking that we can't know and that we'll never be able to know. I'm not saying that's the whole answer, but I don't think in our society there are enough spaces in our schools
Mhm.
or even in our colleges or in our universities where we are taught that you have access to divine light. You have access to divine wisdom. You know, when you go to university or you have anything like an academic education, you're not allowed a thought of your own. You know, you have to reference everybody else the whole time, and you have to explain why they're wrong because another voice has got another opinion, and you reference why they're wrong. And a lot of times in academia, you're referencing why everybody's wrong, you know, and it's like we just haven't got enough spaces, I think. And that's probably, I guess that's why we all gravitate towards each other like we do here at Spiritual Directions, you know, is because we want to claim that capacity to know again,
Mhm.
and to know that we can connect with the intelligence of the universe and appreciate it. I think that's also it, Carolyn. You know, we're not here to define these things necessarily, but we are here to appreciate them and participate in it. So, and you give us that. You've always given us that. That's, you know, when I think of all the times I've ever listened to you give talks, you know, one of the things you've always done for me is to reinstate that line of light where you say you can do this. Of course you can.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right. So finally, the bright morning star, and how do we work with these teachings now and in the year to come, which was obviously our work.
Well, I think we've been giving an example of this all along in our brief little time here today, which is, pay attention to the power of your light in
Mm.
all that you do. In all that you do. That you think of yourself as a being, as a human being that is actually radiating a life force. And that life force, in its most powerful intensity, as perfume, is felt like love and or hate.
Mm.
That when you really put the light bulb will burn you,
Mm.
or it will light your way,
Mhm.
right? So that life force is, you can use it. The force of your darkness is as intense as the force of your light,
Mhm.
and you start living that truth, that's your loudest language, is the one you never speak,
Mm.
and that is the truth.
Yeah.
It's the one that you radiate,
Yeah.
and pay attention to it. It is, when you're looking at a person, realize you're also shining your light upon them, and they are shining their light upon you.
Yeah.
and that you can shine this light upon every human being you see. You can hold a prayer in your heart and just walk down the street and say, bless this person, and live that, watch that, live the power of your light. Live it.
Yeah, thank you. In that last class as well, the invitation that I offered was just to say, look, make sure you incorporate vertical moments into your day and into your life. You know, there's got to be a point where we stop running around and we become still, and we align ourselves, you know, with that mystical invitation of every moment. And I think why I found mysticism to be so compelling is that mysticism isn't about the past or the future, it's about right now. And therefore Advent is 365. Lent is 365. You know, any of these times are really every day of the year, aren't they? And I love that. And there's a poem by Howard Thurman that that we both know, that we thought would be great to share, which is, it's called The Work of Christmas. It's Howard Thurman, for anybody who doesn't know Howard Thurman, amongst, well, he created the first interfaith church of America, really, in San Francisco. But he also, of course, was a huge influence on Martin Luther King and Maya Angelou and many great many great lights in the world. But this is called The Work of Christmas, and I like this one in particular because this one speaks to, what do you do afterwards? What do you do after the holy season is finished? And this is what he says: the work of Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to find the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among brothers, to make music in the heart.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Brilliant, man.
Well, this was fun.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that we got asked to do a bonus class by quite a lot of people, or to do a follow-up, at least we called it, you know, we called it the bonus class. I think also that spoke to the point that actually, you know, this program is never over, really. And I hope that we've created enough insights and exercises within the program that people would feel like they could take anything we've said and make it current and make it all about now, and work with it in their life. So Carolyn, thank you so much.
Robert,
amazing journey.
And to all of you out there, have a blessed holy season, a very merry winter, and a wonderful next year. I hope we see you on all our programs next year. That would be wonderful. And have a great Christmas.
God bless.